Okay, now we're back to the next section. And then this next section, we're going to go a little bit more further with the array list. So let's get into it. Okay, now let's get back to the curriculum. 3.4.1.2, we're going to deal with the for each. Below the do while, so below the do while would come to the for each. Think like the compiler. This what gives it away for you to let you know that this is a for each. So below the do while, which that's what we did on starting on line 28, it says that demonstrates two ways you can loop through a list in Java. Here's the first, which collects the numeric grade for each student. So we have for, and it's a for each. So I like to think of the for each like in, I'll say, of the for loop, what we have in JavaScript. But here we set the variable and we declare it with a string. And so this is an object, so the student, and we want to get that one student from the student. So it goes through the loop, the for loop, it loops over and it pulls out each student and it stores it in that variable student. And it has to be a string because that's what we're declaring it. And so as we go through that, we're going to print through the loop the grade for the student. And then we're going to add in, we put a little space in, and then we add in whatever that grade is. This is what the for loop is doing. This you may recall in Java for each loop syntax. You may read this in your head or even allow as for each student in students. As you might expect at this point, we must declare the editor variable student with its data type. So don't forget to give it a data type. It's like declaring a new variable. So you're declaring it here as a string. So it has to be a string. You can't pass numbers into this one. So in 3.4.1.3 for loop, the next loop on display prints out each student's name and grade. That's the for loop that we have down here, that we have right here on line 34. So here on line 34, we have system print out, right? And it says break with class roster. Double sum dot zero starts with a 0, so we're initializing it at 0. So that's our starting point. And then we're going through the for loop. And inside this for loop, we notice that we have a standard for loop where we go in, we're establishing declaring the I as an integer. We are starting at 0 for the 0 index. It's I less than students dot size. And then we iterate over that. We increment or we update. That's what the I++ means. So here we introduce the syntax student.size, and this is a method. Remember, anything on the left side of the dot is the object. Everything to the right side is a method or a property. And we know it's a method because of the parentheses, which utilizes the size method of the array list. So this is a part of the array list. This is what you have access to, or methods that you have access to in this array list, which is a class. This method returns the integer representing the number of items in the list. This is similar to the string.length method. Now, in this for loop, we use a loop index to define the starting point, ending point, and increment for iteration. It may be helpful for you to consider this kind of construction as something like for integer I in the range of the number of items and students. The first statement inside the parentheses declares and initializes a loop index variable I. The second statement is a Boolean expression that is our exit condition, In other words, we will keep looping as long as this expression is evaluated to true. So we want to make sure we have at some point in the for loop that something has to evaluate to false, because as long as it's evaluating to true, it's going to keep going. And if you don't put a stop somewhere in there or a break somewhere in there, you're going to have an infinite loop. So whenever a loop, for loop is always true, it's going to keep executing. It won't stop until it's false, unless you tell it in the beginning to be false, and it'll keep executing as long as it's false, because the flip side of that is really still true. So I know that's confusing, but keep practicing and it's going to make sense. So here we evaluate the truth. The third statement is used to increment the value of the loop index variable at the end of the iteration through the loop. Again, the syntax I++ is Java's shorthand for I equal I plus 1, or I assigned to I plus 1. And that's like we're adding one to I and then it assign it to the other, to the actual variable I. Java also supports the shorthand I dash dash or negative negative to decrement the value of I. We can also write I plus equal 2 as a shorthand for I assigned to I plus 2. So it gives it 2, it doubles it for you. Instead of incrementing one time, it increments twice or every 2 times. So 2, 4, 6, 8 like that. In the final lines of the program, we compute the average grade for all the students. So here we go. The double average, and this is a formula, sum divided by student dot size. And then we print that out, the average. Now in 3.4.2 ArrayList methods, let's gather up a few of the ArrayList methods that we've encountered so far, along with a few ones. While these will be most common methods and properties that you with this that you use with this class, they by no means represent a complete list. Refer to the official documentation on ArrayList class. Make sure you click on that and check out that documentation. Here it is. We already clicked on it earlier. So here, to demonstrate the use of these methods, we'll create an array list called planets. Here's the array list. It's going to be a string, planets, getting it from a new array list class. Okay, we got an empty array list. We need to use the class.add method to populate this collection with items. There are other means to declare and initialize an array list in fewer lines. These require knowledge of other collection types, so we'll stick with .add for the time being. Using the add method to populate planets. Here's an example. Thus, the first item in this table, array list methods in Java. Here's the array list. Go through, read each one of these, and here's something else. Here's a couple more methods that require slightly longer descriptions, which is the collection.sort, the sort method, collection.sort, and the description says rearranges the elements of collection into ascending order. Here's the example. Now, this method is technically used in Java's collection class and thus requires a different import statement. So remember, you got to import this in. Collections is itself a member of the collection framework, but not all members of the framework are instances of this class. We included this method here because should you be in the market for a sorting method, this is a helpful one to know. It is helpful. Trust me, because there are different type of algorithms, and sorting algorithms have multiple sorting algorithms. So understanding how using this tool is going to be helpful. Trust me. Now, perhaps you recall that in Java, you must know the size of the array when you create it. So we'll need to first define the new array before we can use toArray. So here we go, string, an array. We know this is going to be an array, planet array, new string, planet.size, planet.toArray, planet array. Speaking of arrays, let's see the array version of Gradebook next. Here's some references that I definitely want you to go through and check out. Check your understanding, and then we're going to see you in the next section. So far, we're learning about arrays. We're taking our time to understand what's in this particular file and then run it, play around with it. So as long as you keep on practicing, you're just going to keep improving. So that's why I say the more you practice, the more you improve. I'll see you in the next video.